Hello, this is Dr. Ordu, and I'm here today to talk about solid academic writing and APA style. The purpose of this session is to familiarize graduate level students with the importance of writing as an academic scholar. And so I have some tips here to assist you. Now, because this session can be used by any graduate level student at any college or university, please make sure that you check with your particular school for any requirements that they may have specifically. So this is general information, again, that can be used to help you understand what solid academic writing looks like. So let's start with the font that you should use. Generally, you should type your papers in Times New Roman size 12. Some schools do accept other fonts, so here again, make sure that you check, but you can never go wrong using Times New Roman size 12. Always include a title page with any assignment that you submit, and put your name on your paper. That is very important so that the assignment can be identified as yours. Double space your assignments and include an introduction, body, and conclusion. Shortly, we're going to look at some sample papers, and I will emphasize the importance of the introduction, body, and conclusion. The content should be divided into sections that are clearly identifiable to the reader. Be sure to cite research where applicable. You will need to cite research in every single assignment you do submit. That is something that academic scholars must do. If you have a course textbook, be sure to use it as a resource. You may have multiple textbooks, so you can cite any of them, along with any other module or unit resources that you have available to you. Now, in most online courses, and this information can be used for either an online course or a traditional course, but looking at online courses as well as traditional courses, they're generally divided into modules, weeks, or units. So however your course is divided, there are generally materials and resources provided to you, and you should take full advantage of those. So for any given week or module, take a look at what the course instructor or the college or university is providing. Also, you want to seek additional research through online libraries or sites like Google Scholar. Most schools have their libraries online now, so you can access them anytime, anywhere. And you just need to be savvy and able to locate information. So become familiar with the databases within the online libraries, communicate with the librarians, look at tutorials, do whatever you need to familiarize yourself with how to use the library. And then once you are familiar with databases that are related to your subject area or your content area, you can always go there to locate additional scholarly articles that you can include in your assignments. Generally, assignments should be written in third person. So you want to speak as if you are a narrator, if at all possible, instead of first person. And it does depend on the nature of the assignment. If you look at the assignment prompt, and it does ask you to do some reflection or to talk about something that you specifically do, then you might be able to use first person. Do check with your course instructor on that, but the general rule of thumb is to write in third person. Attend to all aspects of the assignment. Look closely at what the prompt is asking you to do. Look at all of the critical elements and make sure that you include those in your paper. So you want to definitely review your instructions very carefully. Leaving out any critical elements or pieces of the assignment could result in not receiving full credit. In addition, if there is a rubric available, I would look closely at that rubric prior to development of my assignment, during the time I'm working on the assignment, and definitely before I submit it. I would make sure that my assignment is aligned to all of those criteria in the rubric. Don't submit papers that look like the poorly organized paper that I will show you in a few minutes, with the content run all together and no division of sections within the paper. That definitely does not demonstrate solid academic writing. Do submit papers that look like the well-organized paper with content that is clearly divided into sections and that align with your assignment instructions. So here are some general expectations for setting papers up APA style. I think the key to formatting your paper correctly, if you're not very familiar with APA, is to use a template, because all you have to do is put your information into the template. And APA style papers have organization with section headings, and again, do not run the content all together. We'll look at the two papers in a few minutes. Always start with an introduction and end with a conclusion. Each of them should be a minimum of 5 to 8 sentences. So you don't want your introduction and conclusions to be too long. However, you also do not want them to be too brief. More emphasis on reading assignment instructions carefully to include the right content within each section of the paper. And the other things here have been previously mentioned, with the exception of the last one on the list. Remember to include your references. Always double check and make sure that every single citation in your paper is included in your reference list. That is something that is very important. The two have to align with each other. So if I see Jones 2019 cited within your paper, then I should see Jones in your reference list with the full citation or annotation of that particular article, book, paper, or whatever it represents. So that is generally what the expectations are for solid academic writing. Now we will take a look. First of all, let's look at this APA template. So many times students have trouble with the running head, getting that correct in their paper. Here on the title page, you want to put the full name of your paper, your name, and whatever college or university you attend. You can add a date as a 4th line. You should not go beyond 4 lines though. That is enough on the title page. Again, the title of your paper, line 1, your name, line 2, the college, university you attend, line 3, and on line 4, you can include a date. The running head has to be on the title page with a page number. If you notice, once I go to page 2, the running head has disappeared, and there should just be a short title here that represents whatever your assignment is about. So for page 2 and beyond, you want the shortened title that represents your paper. And for page 1, you want the running head with the somewhat longer title, all caps, and your page number 1 here. All of these headers should be in all caps. So the first thing you want to do is come up with a title, and this represents your introduction. The word introduction is no longer used in APA style, so you do not want to put introduction here as the title of the introductory section of your paper. You want to put your full paper title here. And one thing I like about this template, not only does it help you set up and format your paper, if you notice within each section, it gives you some instructions, some hints and tips that you can use. After the introductory section, you want to move on to the first subtitle. Subtitles are also known as section headings. I mostly call them section headings, but it is a way to divide the content of your paper. So whatever the main topics you're going to talk about within your paper, you want to look at those, divide them into reasonable topics or areas, and then use those as your subtitles or section headings. And then this just gives you a clue as to what you might include in the body paragraph. It says state, explain, support, conclude. So if you use that particular model, the first sentence will state the paragraph's topic. The second sentence will explain the paragraph's topic with more detail. The third, fourth, and fifth sentences should provide support for the paragraph's topic. Research sources should be used in the appropriate areas. And then the last sentence of the paragraph should be your closing statement to conclude and refer back to the paragraph's main topic. So that is a good synopsis of what should be included in a paragraph. Now, we do know that paragraphs are different lengths. So depending on how many supporting details you want to include, your paragraph may go beyond what is discussed here. But if you use the SESC, state, explain, support, and conclude method or model, you should be able to put together logical and very coherent paragraphs that will flow well from each part of your paper. You can include as many subtitles or section headings as needed based on the requirements for your assignment. Once you are done with your subtitles or section headings, then you want to move on to your conclusion. And so as to not be confusing, I'm going to put conclusion here. So this is the place for your conclusion paragraph. It should definitely refer back to the thesis of your paper. You do not want to include new information in your conclusion. It is an opportunity for you to summarize or highlight the key points that you made in your paper, to re-emphasize or reiterate important things that sort of wrap the paper up very well for the reader. And again, the length should be 5 to 8 sentences long. And since I mentioned the thesis here in the conclusion, before we leave this particular document, going back to your introduction, you want to have a thesis statement, if at all possible, in your paper. What is a thesis statement? It is your claim. It is your opinion about the topic. It is something that you can argue, that you can support with the paragraphs that you include in your paper, the sections that you include in your paper. I always suggest that the thesis statement for any assignment be the last sentence in the introduction. If you make it the last sentence in the introduction, it's easy to locate, and it's a good segue into the paper itself, because after you present that thesis, then you go directly into your body sections of the paper. Now, if you notice, this paper or template provides the framework for producing an assignment that has a clear introduction. This is the introduction section. The body section is where you put your section headings or subtitles. So all of this would be the body. Any content that is related to those section headings. And then your conclusion is at the end. So you have 3 clear sections: introduction, body, conclusion. And then you want to remember your references. This is the general format for how a full reference should look. Any research that's cited in the body of the paper, you want to include the last name of any authors with their first initials, the year of publication, the title of the article with only the first word capitalized, the title of the publication. So if it's a journal, you would need to put the title of the journal or periodical there, along with the volume and number and the pages where the article can be found. If it is a textbook, of course, you want to put the name of the textbook publisher along with the location where it was published. All of that can be looked up on additional websites related to APA style. But it is very, very critical and important to have the reference list and for it to be properly formatted within the paper. Finally, let's take a look at the well-organized and poorly organized papers. I'm going to start with the poorly organized paper first. So this paper focuses on 2 things: andragogy and pedagogy. That is the running head title. Now, depending on, if you look at the full title, it says the differences between andragogy and pedagogy. The student could have put that here, differences between, to make this a longer heading. If you notice, here's the title of the assignment, the student's name, the name of the college or university, the date. So the title page is done fairly well. Again, I would add more information here, maybe to say differences. And then you have the heading, the shortened heading here. It really should be different from the full heading that you see on the title page. But in this case, they're the same. As long as you have this here, that's what's important. But I want you to look at this paper. It just starts off, with a 3-sentence paragraph here at the beginning. And then there are more paragraphs and information that follow. And if we just keep going through it, we just see a lot of information here. Nothing is divided. There are no sections. It's confusing. Anybody reading this is not able to see a clear opening, middle, and closing. That's what an introduction, body, and conclusion provide for the reader. So you can't tell where the paper starts, which part is the body, which part is the conclusion. And the reader should not be left to guess or assume that information. That is why you want to go with a paper that looks like this. So if you'll notice the running head on this particular paper, there's a word added: distinguishing andragogy and pedagogy. You have your standard 4 lines of information. And then if I move on, now I have a heading for my introduction. It is differences between andragogy and pedagogy. That's my topic. Then I provide my paragraph that has at least 5 to 8 sentences. Remember that short 3-sentence paragraph that we saw in the previous paper, and we couldn't tell really if that was the introduction or where it started or where it ended? Well, here we can tell. So the thesis statement here says the main differences between andragogy and pedagogy are the relationships formed between teacher and learner and the end goal for the student. So that's what we mean by a claim, something that you can take and prove or argue throughout the paper. The first section is about adult and child learning. Notice, of course, there's research that is cited throughout the body of the paper. One thing that I have noted as a professor is some confusion with use of direct quotes. Whenever you pull information directly from your source, you have to put it in quotation marks so that the reader can tell what came exactly from the source. And then you also must put the page number. So here we can clearly see that this information from because to learning came directly from the source, and it came from page 5. That's very important for citation of direct quotes. So if we keep going, we have another section called Application to Teacher Leadership. Then we have a section on strengths and areas for growth. Very good job with the body of the paper. So to recap, we have a clear introduction section here, this paragraph. You don't want your introduction to be too long. If your introduction becomes a page or close to a page, it is way, way too long. It is just supposed to be an introduction to your paper or assignment. Then we have, in this particular paper, 3 section headings or subtitles, and then we get to our conclusion. Let's notice that our conclusion is short and succinct. The student did cite one research citation here. I do see students do this in conclusions. I'm not a big fan of citing research in the conclusion. I believe that research should be cited in the introductory section of the paper and mainly in the body section. In the introduction, I recommend no more than 1 to 2 citations of research. The body should have a plethora of research on scholarly sources that support any assertions that are made. And then the conclusion, again, the purpose is to summarize and hit those key points or highlights of the paper. So I would not include very much research at all, but if you want to include 1 citation in the conclusion, that is okay. Now we get to the reference list. So in this particular paper, the student only cited 2 scholarly references, research sources rather. And you can see that they're in alphabetical order, which is another important thing, and that the APA style has been adhered to mainly. I will point out that when you have a title that has a colon involved, right here with the Merriam source, the first letter after the colon should actually be capitalized. So I would go back and capitalize the key here in pillars, but otherwise everything looks good. So that will conclude my discussion and presentation of how to write as an academic scholar. I hope this information has been useful.